Welcome to Shattering Myths. Our mission is to know who is working against our interest, to understand why they are doing so, and to expose them. Because condemning such treacherous schemes isn't hateful. It's the most caring and compassionate thing we can do. In our concluding hour, we're going to continue to chronicle the prophetic events detailed in the 17th and 18th chapters of Yahowah, Isaiah, because they speak very deliberately about our time. If you'd like to participate in this discussion, our number is 877-300-7645. We are pure hypocrites. And that's really the best way to describe the government of America. I'm not going to say the average American is a hypocrite, but certainly the government is. Obama is threatening to impose more sanctions on Russia if they don't cease being aggressive, when it was America that stirred up the protests in Kiev in the first place. It was America that encouraged the protesters in Kiev to occupy buildings and to demand the ouster of their government. It was America who, through its CIA and State Department, caused this mess in the first place. It is America that pitted the IMF, International Monetary Fund, against Russia's offer of $15 billion worth of debt relief for the Ukraine, and made it a referendum between the Warsaw Pact and NATO. It is America that then acknowledged that the junta that had come to control Kiev was now a legitimate government when it is wholly unconstitutional and was not elected by the people. It is then America who started threatening Russia when Russia went to the aid of her people. This was Russia for better part of 300 years. In the places that are now part of Russia again, Crimea, population is 80% Russian. And now in the east, in the area that was long known as Little Russia or New Russia, part of Russia again for 300 years, where the people who are living there are now trying to show that they don't want anything to do with the mobsters that have taken over Kiev. America is paying for the Kiev government, acting government, to deploy its military to attack its own citizens. And in the midst of this, America has the audacity to tongue-lash the Russians when America's vice president yesterday told the acting Ukrainian government that we would pay for, we would support, we want the Ukrainians to deploy their military against their own people. We ignited what may well turn out to be World War III. If it isn't World War III, it won't be because America did something to prevent it, because America will be at fault for initiating it. And now what position did we put Russia in? We backed Russia into a corner where there's only one possible response: intervention. And if that's what we wanted, then now what? Once the Ukrainian military began to assault its own people, the Russians, who see this region as part of Russia, and rightfully so, and see the people as Russians, and rightfully so, are going to defend themselves, are going to defend them. Russia has been really clear all along. It says, you know, we don't want to get involved in Ukraine, but we will get involved if the lives of Russians are threatened. So what did the United States do? See to it that the lives of Russians were threatened. This is a horrible situation. And the guilty party is once again this hypocritical nation, the United States of America. This news out of the Ukraine. Russia has ordered new military exercises on its border with the Ukraine in response to an operation by Kiev against pro-Russian separatists. Not just pro-Russian separatists. They are Russians. And what are they separating from? They were separated from Russia, and they wish to be part of Russia again. How does that make them separatists? Doesn't it make them Russian uniters? The Russian defense minister, Sergei Shoigu, said Monday that he had been forced to react. That's true. He had been. He had been forced to react by the aggressive behavior of the United States of America. After Ukrainian commandos moved on the separatist stronghold of Sloviansk, President Vladimir Putin had earlier warned the Ukraine of consequences if they did such a thing. Pro-Russian separatists are occupying key buildings in a dozen eastern towns, defying the central government. There is no central government. What they are doing is actually more noble, more appropriate than what the protesters did in Kiev. In Kiev, the protesters initiated a very aggressive protest against the existing popularly elected government, and through violence, threw that government out. What's happening in the East is that people are now rising up and saying, wait a minute, we elected a government. You threw that government out. We want nothing to do with you. Mr. Shoigu, the Russian Federation defense minister, was quoted by the Interfax news agency saying, if this military machine is not stopped, it will lead to greater numbers of dead and wounded. We will be forced to react to such a deployment and a development like this in this situation. Wow. Everything that we shouldn't have done, we have done. And now look at this situation. The United States of America seems poised to go to war against Russia. And folks, it is not a war America can win. Yes, I understand that our military is 10 times bigger than theirs is. It's probably 10 times more sophisticated than theirs is. Our troops are probably better trained than theirs are. We can kill more effectively than they can. I understand that. But I also understand that this nation is over $17 trillion in debt. That between spine and the Veterans Administration costs and the Defense Department, that we spend $1 trillion a year on our war machine. And I understand that if we were to engage in war against the Russian Federation, the first casualty would be the United States of America. It cannot survive it. So why are we positioning ourselves in this for war? Well, I guess one superpower is to goad into war is insufficient. So President Barack Hussein Obama has reaffirmed today his support for Japan and its conflict over the islands with China. Mr. Obama, who is on a four-nation Asian tour, warned against escalation in the dispute and said he wanted to see it resolved peacefully. Yeah, right. Guess what his next statement was? He confirmed that the islands fell under a security treaty that commits the United States to act if Japan is attacked. So here's a half a dozen rocks. I mean, they are as useless, they are as unimportant as rocks could ever be, that sit between Japan and China. China claims them, Japan claims them. And the United States is said it will go to war on behalf of Japan against China if China claims them. We are being run. America is being run by someone who is grotesquely out of control, a belligerent. I read this article. I thought it was interesting. A national humanist group is suing, and the humanist would be the national religion of America. It's secular humanism. America now has a nationally approved religion, socialist secular humanism. So a national humanist group is suing a New Jersey school district on behalf of a family that believes the phrase, under God in the Pledge of Allegiance, is discriminatory towards atheist children. The group says the phrase, added in 1954, marginalizes atheist and humanist kids as something less than ideal patriots. The anonymous plaintiffs say that those two words violate the state's Constitution's right to equal protection. David Noyes, an attorney for the American Humanist Association's Legal Center, said that the schools should not permit the exercise that teaches students that patriotism is tied to a belief in God. Boy, that's an interesting position, isn't it? The atheist, the socialist secular humanist, wants to be perceived as patriotic, because the whole idea of a socialist secular humanist is to be part of the social construct. The bigger the social construct, the better. The more devoted the individuals are to the greater whole, the better. They want to be seen as the best of patriots. We'll be back in a moment. Welcome back to Shattering Myths. It is interesting that socialist secular humanists are vying with Christians for whose patriotism is better. The Christian will integrate their religion and their government, and they will see that sing God Bless America and want to pledge allegiance to America as a nation under God. They want to speak of patriotism and elections in their churches. They want to have bumper stickers that say, God bless our troops. From a Christian point of view, there is a almost wholesale integration between religion and politics, between religion and patriotism. Now, the atheist, which has now been elevated to the national religion of America, socialist secular humanism, is the religion of government, the religion of politics, the religion of academia, with its moral code called political correctness. They want to be seen as equally, maybe in fact better patriots. And the truth is, they probably are. But the reality is that Yahowah asked us to not be patriotic, to walk away from our country, just as we disassociate ourselves from religion. But in this case, you have the nation's two largest religions, socialist secular humanism and Christianity, vying for definition of what defines a patriot. Hello, Glenn. We have Glenn having called in. We certainly didn't shortchange our listeners on the topic of the day, which is how will the United States start this next world war?
Yeah, so good afternoon, Emmett.
Good afternoon.
Over here.
Yeah.
First of all, about what you were just talking about, the social or secular humanism, there's even one atheist group, headed up by a man and his wife who used to be a pastor even, but now he's an atheist, and they even feature an atheist in foxholes organization.
Yeah. Wow.
Because because they want to be seen as patriotic, and they want to contradict the notion that there are no atheists in foxholes.
Yeah, and of course the thing that is unwritten here is that socialist secular humanism, which is the expression of man as God, is the national religion of this country. It is the religion of politics, the religion of academia, it's the religion of the media. And so it is the dominant religion in America, and particularly with them being so successful in indoctrinating young people in schools. They are surpassing the devotion that used to be expressed by Christianity at a very rapid rate. You know, soon you're going to be able to say America is a socialist secular country, and the majority of people will agree.
Yes, except well, anyway, I think there'll still be an influx. They'll import people with religion from other places. But anyway.
Yeah, well, if you look at the largest minority in America, because now there really is no majority in America, but the largest minority in America are Hispanics. And the Hispanics come in absolutely wallowing in Roman Catholicism. So Christianity, by way of Roman Catholicism, is growing in America at a time that any reasoned individual should be disassociating themselves from the disgusting nature of that perverse institution.
And in Europe, all the churches died off, so they started importing Muslims. But anyway.
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
Remember one of the last times we spoke, I mentioned something about the hypocrisy of the U.S., like complaining about the airplane buzzing the ship and about how our fighters shadowed the bear bombers for decades. Yeah. Well, guess what happened yesterday? The bear bomber was back in the news. Air Force fighters of Denmark, the Netherlands, and Britain were sent up to shadow Russian bear bombers over the ocean.
Great.
And it was made the news.
And so they're NATO countries that are trying to flex their muscles against Russia. And you know when you
propose again.
Yes, in fact everything that Obama is doing is actually Cold War strategies, and what Putin is doing isn't. You know, if we were to pull ourselves out of the rhetoric and pull ourselves out of the patriotic view that is dominating the news and politics, we'd see that it's America that's acting as if it were the 1970s and we were up to our eyeballs in the Cold War and engaged fighting Russian equipment in Vietnam all over again. Welcome back to Shattering Myths. There is a difference, Glenn, between Russia and the United States engaging as if both nations were still engaged in the Cold War. You see, back in the 1960s and the 1970s, America was a bastion of free enterprise. America is now socialistic. Back in the 60s and 70s, the USSR was socialistic. It's now fascist. My, how the parties have changed. I don't know if you know it or not, but the ferry that killed somebody, went down and killed so many people in the waters off South Korea, when the ferry went down, almost 100% of the attention was focused on the victims. You know, we're a world now that is fixated on victims. motivations don't typically enter into the conversation. We don't want to know why things happen. We just want to wallow in the victims. The Boston bombings was a great example. Let's celebrate the victims as opposed to trying to understand what caused the brothers to bomb innocent people. Now, in the ferry situation, after the president of South Korea infers that the captain was a murderer, we find what caused that ferry to fail. And yet, as I survey the 15 news sources and 10 stories per news source, I only find one on the ferry, and that's how two of the victims, a boy and a girl, tied their life vests together. We know exactly what caused that ferry to fail. You know what it was?
Nope.
Yep, and you're well read. They loaded 3 times more gross weight and cargo on the ferry than the ferry was designed to carry. And while that was a recipe for disaster, when the 26-year-old girl was in control of the ship and she noticed that the currents were pushing it off course, she turned way too aggressively without slowing down first. And so the centrifugal force of a fast and sharp turn with an overloaded ferry caused it to roll. Those are the causes. Now, it's also interesting that the report, which the government has released, it says that the ferry was carrying 3 times more cargo than it was designed to carry. They say that last year, the company that owns the ferry bribed government officials to get it a clean bill of health. Now, I don't know if that is an indictment on the Korean government, that they accept bribes and that to get through the government processes, you have to bribe the government officials, or that businesses are corrupt and rather than doing the right thing, they would prefer to bribe government officials, or both.
Well, apparently that owner who's behind all that was a very wealthy previous cult leader whose family has been involved in all sorts of shenanigans previously. So he's got quite the personal history.
Well, actually, in Korea, one of the wealthiest individuals, I think he's dead now. I met him during his life, actually flew on his Challenger and attended a gala affair that he threw in his honor. Sung Young Moon, the reverend that pretended as if he were the Messiah. He is the
Washington Times guy.
Yeah, the Washington Times guy, the guy that owns so many Korean enterprises and made all of his money by claiming to be to literally be God, and taking huge donations because religion is a very profitable business.
And the man whose coronation was attended by U.S. congressmen and senators.
Oh yeah, and a man who was routinely supported by Jerry Falwell. In fact, that's how I ended up meeting and flying on his airplane. But beyond the ferry, did you know that day before yesterday, America put...
Speaking of moon, just before we move, I wasn't speaking of moon. The guy was in 2 or something like that.
Yeah, no, I understand that in this particular case it wasn't moon. I just thought that our audience would benefit from knowing that the cult leader that is the most influential there is Sung Young Moon, and so it's just interesting to know that in a country that is now almost uniformly Christian, that cults are extraordinarily prominent and extraordinarily profitable, as well as extraordinarily corrupt.
Tells you something about the Korean mindset as followers. But at one point, over 30 of his people died in one place, but he wasn't implicated.
Great.
Yeah, I know.
Did you know this?
I know something. Yeah.
Yeah. Day before yesterday, do you know that America committed its troops to engage in warfare in a foreign country?
Oh, yeah, I heard it out of Obama's own mouth, standing right next to the premier Japanese president. Yeah.
Well, no, we deployed Americans in Yemen. American troops. We deployed American troops in Yemen.
Yes, I did. I did that overnight,
the story was that we sent a drone to kill a bunch of Muslims because we didn't like their video where they said that they're going to attack the cross, because if you got a bunch of fundamentalist Islamic clerics besmirching Christianity, it's really hard to justify your promotion of Islam as a wonderful and tolerant religion. And so after that video made the rounds in YouTube, America sent drones to kill the participants in that video. Making a video, I guess, is something that you can't do these days. So anyway, we just thought that, okay, this was the most ruthless of America's drones in Yemen, because it killed something like 50 or 60 people. Well, come to find out, it wasn't just drones. It was American aircraft, American pilots, and American special forces that engaged in a firefight in Yemen. Did you recall giving approval to your government to engage in a war in Yemen?
No, I didn't hear anything about a declaration of war or anything. I misheard your question before, but yeah, I'm up to speed. Yeah. No, I don't recall Congress voting on that or anything.
So the American president is free to deploy American troops in war in any country of his choosing at any time of his choosing without making an announcement that he has done so?
Well,
or even giving a request? It says the United States offered extensive assistance beyond drone strikes. Assistance, this is funny. During a massive anti-terror operation in Yemen, including flying Yemeni commandos to a site where they killed scores of suspected al-Qaeda members. A U.S. official said U.S. Special Operations Troops wore night vision gear and flew Yemeni forces to a remote mountain spot in southern Yemen, according to a senior U.S. official. The Yemeni helicopters, they're not Yemeni helicopters, they're American helicopters, that flew U.S. personnel, not just Yemeni troops, that flew U.S. personnel, were used to support the operation. Once there, Yemeni commandos engaged suspected members of al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula, the U.S. official said, who added that the Americans, troops, special forces, that were there, they took no part in the actual combat on the ground. I guess they just sat in their helicopters and twiddled their thumbs.
No, they just advised, but come on, I mean, here in America, we don't dare challenge Mexican helicopters that fly into our territory, but it's Africa. We can do whatever we want now. It's just Africa. Come on.
Yeah, didn't we?
We can do whatever we want down there.
Didn't we just advise in Vietnam? Weren't the military troops that we spent into Vietnam advisors? How'd that work out for us?
Yeah, initially. We don't learn. No, it's quite crazy. And like while we're speaking of these radical things, I gotta tell you, I don't know if you heard about Tony Blair's remark yesterday. Former British Prime Minister Tony Blair said that the West should try to downplay and settle its tensions with Russia and China in favor of concentrating on the threat of radical Islam. Of all people.
Wow.
Tony Blair.
Wow. I mean, if you take radical before Islam out, you'd have an almost perfect statement.
Exactly. I couldn't believe it. I'm like, this animist whack job, Tony Blair, it is this pagan, he's a real dingling, personal like religion. And it's like, I couldn't believe it was coming from him. I was like, that almost makes sense. Yeah, I know exactly what you're going to say. So Yada will agree with everything but the radical.
Yeah, but what's interesting here is that while we are positioning bullets and bombs in defense of rocks in the case of China, and in the defense of deadbeats in the case of the Ukraine, the war that is being waged by fundamentalist Muslims against the West, against the cross, using their vernacular, is lost with bullets and bombs. It is made worse with bullets and bombs. Now, the West could thwart the aggression of fundamentalist Islam. There are three things that the West could do that could end Islamic terrorism in 30 days. Three things. If we do any one, in fact, you have to do all three, but if you do these three things, you could end the threat of Islamic terrorism in 3 days, and it does not require bullets and bombs. And the first thing is tell the truth. The most lethal weapon that can be wielded against Islam is the truth. That's why Muslims bring down the Prophet of Doom site. It is irrefutable proof that Islam is a terrorist manifesto, that it is vicious. And so, wield the truth. Start talking honestly about the nature of the religion. You know, for example, just yesterday there was a news story, and in New York, the World Trade Center Museum, committed to the Islamic suicide bombing there, to depict it, has a 7-minute film that records statements, presents statements made by al-Qaeda, showing that al-Qaeda is Islamic, and that they acted based upon their Islamic zeal. And so imams in New York are having a conniption fit that their whole religion is being blackened by this brush. We'll be back in a moment. Glenn, I made a mistake, but at least the mistake is funny in a way. I said that the airplanes that the American Special Forces were flying into battle on behalf of the Yemeni troops were American. They weren't. I'll give you one guess as to whose military aircraft America was flying into battle in Yemen.
Russians?
There you go. You're 1 for 1 today. We were flying.
1 for 2.
We were flying Russian helicopters into battle. Our troops flying Russian helicopters into battle in Yemen. I mean to tell you, I find that hilarious. Oh, by the way,
go ahead.
I was going to say, well, we were engaged in New York, saying that you can't have a 7-minute video that associates Islam with the attack on the World Trade Center, when Islam was solely responsible for the attack on the World Trade Center. Now, I'll give a bone to those that said that our government should have done more, that our government knew the attack was going to occur and did nothing to stop it. But the suicide bombing was an Islamic operation. Everybody engaged was a fundamentalist Muslim. And to associate the carnage of 9/11 with Islam is unacceptable, according to the imams in New York. At the same time, by the way, there is a trial in New York of an Islamic cleric, Abu Hamza al-Marsi. And a video that he broadcast on the internet was shown at his trial on Monday, where an interviewer asked him about the September 11, 2001 attacks that killed 3,000 people. His quote was, "Everyone was happy when the planes hit the World Trade Center. They were celebrating." And so here you've got an Islamic cleric that says, "Oh yeah, we were really happy. We were all celebrating when it happened." But if you associate it with Islam, oh no, you can't do that. That's wholly inappropriate.
Right. Well, so were the dancing Israelis, who included a couple of Mossad agents. But yeah, so I think you and I perhaps aren't all on the same page on 9/11, but that's
hilarious. That there were Mossad agents that perpetrated 9/11.
Well, no, they were happy about it. I said they perpetrated. I said they were happy about it.
I'm not. I would. The likelihood that there were people, isolated individuals, that live in countries around the world that have no affinity for Islam, that were happy about 9/11, is obvious. There's no way to deny that, because look at all of the vested interests that 9/11 ended up serving. I mean, if you're the CEO of Halliburton, you're going to be dancing a jig because of 9/11. Oh, if you are being having your citizens slaughtered by Islamic terrorists, and America has 3,000 dead because of an attack of Islamic terrorists, I mean, you're going to assume that America is going to be with you in the fight against Islamic terrorists, and therefore, if your job is to defend Israel, you might say, well, this a horrible thing happened, but in the long run, it may turn out to be a good thing. And so, so I'm on board with that. But unfortunately, the way America responded to 9/11 and disassociated the act from Islam and then started a war against a tactic, which is stupid, we made everything worse. I was going to say, here's the three things that we do if you wanted to end Islamic terrorism in a matter of a month. The first thing that and by the way, I wrote this and published it within a month of the 9/11 attacks. The first thing that you do is that you have politicians, you have academics, you have the media do what I did, which is to study the 5 oldest Islamic sources. Come to know what the Sirah, which is the first recorded, that is the biography of Muhammad. Read it, learn what it says. Read the Torah, which is the history of Islam's formation, compiled by Tabari. Both of those books were a compilation of hadith, which are all reports from Muhammad and his companions. Read it. Read the topical arrangement of hadith, the same hadith, compiled by Bukhari and Muslim. And then read the Quran. And if you want to save time, read Prophet of Doom, because it uses those same 5 books to put the Quran in chronological order. And then tell the truth about the religion.